About that time Antiochus Epiphanes returned from Persia with his armies in disarray. He had entered the city of Persepolis and attempted to plunder its temples and bring the town under his control. However, the people there had rushed to arms and routed the invaders, forcing them into a humiliating defeat. When Antiochus arrived at Ecbatana, he received the news of what had happened to Nicanor and to Timothy's forces. He became furious and decided to make the Jews pay for the humiliation he had just suffered. So he commanded his chariot driver to take him to Jerusalem without stopping. But God's judgment went with him because in his arrogance he had said, "When I get to Jerusalem, I will make it a mass grave for the Jews." But the Lord, the God of Israel who sees all things, struck Antiochus with an incurable and mysterious disease. For as soon as he had said these words, a dreadful pain seized his intestines, an excruciating intestinal torture that could not be stopped. This was a very just punishment indeed, considering he had tormented the intestines of others with many barbaric tortures. But not even this stopped his arrogance. He was still filled with pride. Breathing fire in his rage against the Jews, he commanded the driver to go even faster. But as they were hurrying along, he was thrown from the chariot and fell so hard that his every limb was in agony. In his superhuman arrogance, he had thought he could command the waves of the sea and weigh tall mountains on a scale, but now he was thrown to the ground and had to be carried on a stretcher. This was a clear manifestation of God's power. Maggots swarmed out of the wicked man's body, and while he still lived in grief and pain, his flesh rotted away. The stench of his decaying flesh made his army sick. No one could stand to carry the stretcher of this man who had thought only a little while earlier that he could touch the stars of heaven. As a result of God's curse, Antiochus was humbled and began to come to his senses, for his agony grew by the minute. When he himself could no longer stand his own stench, he said, "It is right to be subject to God, and mere humans should not think they are equal to God." Then this wicked man vowed to the Lord, who would not show him any mercy, that he would set Jerusalem free rather than level it and make it a mass grave. He had previously said that the Jews and their children were not worthy to be buried but only to have their bodies thrown out to be eaten by wild animals and vultures. But now he promised to grant them rights equaling those of the Athenians. He had previously desecrated the holy temple, but now he promised to decorate it with the finest gifts, to lavishly replace the holy vessels in it, and to pay from his own resources all the expenses connected with offering the sacrifices. He even said that he would become a Jew himself and go throughout the earth declaring the power of God. But his agony continued, for the just judgment of God had come upon him. Then, realizing he was going to die, he wrote a letter of request to the Jews. Antiochus, king and commander, sends hearty greetings to his excellent citizens, the Jews, and wishes them health and prosperity. If you and your children are well and everything is going as you wish, I am thankful, for my hope is in God. As for me, I have fond memories of you. When I returned from the regions of Persia, I became seriously ill and thought it necessary to make plans for everybody's welfare. Not that I despair of my health, for I have every expectation of recovering from my illness. But I noticed that my father always appointed a successor whenever he led an army into the upper provinces. He wanted to leave everything in order in case anything unexpected happened to him. That way the kingdom would not degenerate into chaos because the people would know who was to lead the government. And I know that the rulers of the neighboring nations watch for opportunities to take advantage of us. So I have appointed my son 𝗕𝗶𝗯𝗹𝗆 to succeed me as king. When traveling in the upper provinces, I have often left him in charge. I have sent him a copy of what I have written here. So I urge and beg you to recall the public and private favors given to you and to continue to be faithful to me and to my son. For I am confident that he will follow my instructions to be fair and kind to you. So the murderer and blasphemer suffered terribly, much as he had made others suffer. And he died a miserable death in the mountains of a foreign country. Philip, his close friend, carried his body home. Then, fearing the son of Antiochus, Philip went to stay with King Ptolemy Philometor in Egypt. Now Maccabees and those who were with him, by the protection of the Lord, recovered the temple and Jerusalem. They tore down the altars the Gentiles had set up in the public square and destroyed their pagan shrines. After they had purified the temple, they made another altar. Striking new fire from flint, they offered the first sacrifice in 2 years. They burned incense, lit the lamps, and set out the bread of the presence. When they had done all these things, they fell face down on the ground and asked the Lord to keep them safe from any further disasters. They also asked that he punish them more gently if they did sin again and that he not hand them over to barbarians and blasphemous people. The purification of the temple occurred on the anniversary of the day it had been polluted by foreigners, that is, on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. They celebrated with joy for 8 days, as is the custom for the festival of shelters. They remembered how they had recently kept the festival of shelters when they were living in caves in the mountains like wild animals. So they carried garlanded wands, green branches, and palm branches and sang hymns to the one who had given them success in purifying his holy place. They voted to pass a public decree that the entire Jewish nation should observe these days every year. We have finished recounting the death of Antiochus, who was called Epiphanes. We will now relate the events that took place during the reign of Antiochus Eupator, the son of that wicked man. We will give a brief summary of the evils brought about by his wars. When Eupator became king, he appointed a man named Lysias to administer the affairs of his kingdom. Before this, Lysias had succeeded Ptolemy Macron as governor of Cilicia and Phoenicia. Ptolemy was determined to act justly towards the Jews and to deal with them peacefully, especially because of the wrongs that had been done to them. But the king's favored leaders came and accused Ptolemy Macron because of his policy towards the Jews. On every side he was called a traitor because he had also left Cyprus, where King Ptolemy Philometor had put him in charge, and had defected to Antiochus Epiphanes. Since Ptolemy Macron had no support, he committed suicide by taking poison. When Gorgias replaced Lysias as governor of Cilicia and Phoenicia, he hired mercenaries and continually fought the Jews. At the same time, the Idumeans, who controlled important fortified strongholds, were also harassing the Jews. They welcomed renegade Jews from Jerusalem and did everything to keep the war going. After seeking God's help through prayer, Maccabees and his troops launched an assault against the Idumean strongholds. They attacked vigorously and captured them, driving back those who fought on the walls and slaughtering everyone they encountered. They killed at least 20,000 men, At least 9,000 men took refuge in 2 very strong towers with plenty of food and weapons to withstand a siege. So Maccabees left Simon and Joseph, along with Zacchaeus and his troops, to command an army that was large enough to besiege them. Then he left to look after more urgent matters. But some of Simon's men were greedy, and they accepted a bribe of 70,000 silver coins to let the men in the tower escape. When Maccabees was told what had happened, he gathered the leaders of the people and accused them of selling out their fellow Jews for money by letting their enemies escape. Then he put those traitors to death and quickly captured the 2 towers. He was successful in battle and in everything else he did, and he killed more than 20,000 men in the 2 fortresses. Timothy, who had already been defeated once by the Jews, gathered a large army of mercenaries and assembled many horsemen from Asia. He approached Judea, intending to take it by force. But Maccabees and his men prayed to God as Timothy drew near. To show their humility, they sprinkled dust on their heads and wore sackcloth. They lay face down at the foot of the altar and asked God to be merciful to them and to be an enemy to their enemies, an opponent to their opponents, as the law of Moses says. After they had prayed, they took up their weapons and marched from the town until they came near their enemies. As soon as the sun came up, the 2 forces attacked each other. One army had not only courage but also confidence in the Lord as its guarantee for victory and success. The other army made rage its leader in the battle. When they were in the heat of battle, the enemy saw 5 men from heaven riding on brilliant horses with golden bridles. These heavenly horsemen were leading the Jews. 2 of them stood on either side of Maccabees, shielding him with their armor and keeping him safe. They shot arrows and thunderbolts at the enemy, making them blind and confused and throwing them into chaos. The Jews killed 20,500 troops and 600 horsemen. Timothy fled to Gazara, a heavily guarded stronghold where Chareas was governor. Maccabees and his army eagerly laid siege to the fortress for 4 days. Those who were inside, trusting in the strength of the place, kept shouting blasphemies and profanities. On the morning of the 5th day, 20 young men who were with Maccabees became furious because of the blasphemy. They bravely stormed the wall and fiercely cut down the enemy. Then others followed them and set fire to the towers, burning the blasphemers alive. Still others broke open the gates and let in the rest of the army so they could capture the town. They killed Timothy, who was found hiding in a cistern, his brother Chareas, and Epaphroditus. After their victory, they sang hymns of thanksgiving, praising the Lord who had shown great kindness to Israel and given them the victory.